without at all wishing to steal the limelight from Lawrence and his talk on transitions. I just will try to make a few connections or draw a few links between all the very rich life experience that we've heard from Lawrence, and try to give a little bit of a perspective on transitioning or change, which might help to make more sense of it in a way that's useful for perhaps surfing the wave of transition in a way that leads to something positive in life. For myself personally, and I think from what I heard from Lawrence, change is not something that most people welcome. And often there's a sense of having to grin and bear changes, although sometimes they might turn out to be for the better. But generally there's a sense of trying to keep things the same, because how things always were is always better. But there are also other people in the world who welcome change and even embrace change and go out looking for change. Sometimes you get the people who like quite risky behaviors, risk takers in life, early adopters of various sorts who like change and it brings them excitement and a sense of meaning in life. Such people exist too. So sometimes we have to also expand our sense of awareness that there are different sorts of people in life. People who can't stand things being kept the same. And they also offer something to the world in a way that's quite interesting, because they don't seem to feel much pain with the change. And there's something people like myself, or perhaps Lawrence, can learn from that as well. But what's for sure is that whether you like change or not, it's certainly there. It's unavoidable. And this is why within Buddhism, this whole thing about impermanence of all conditioned phenomena is something which is said to be one of the three marks of existence. If it exists, then it is bound to change. So you better get used to that. If you attach to something as something, and you try to prevent it from changing, then a lot of suffering will come as a result of that, because in fact it's trying to force something to be something that it's not. So you might want to stay young forever, but you can't stop yourself from aging. You might want to remain healthy forever, but you can't stop yourself from getting ill eventually. You might want to live forever, but you can't stop yourself from dying eventually. So any struggle, you could say that it is foolhardy. Not to say that you shouldn't look after your health and so on, but you try to get a good run for your money. So acceptance of change is somehow in there in many of the Buddhist teachings. So is life nothing more than being flotsam on the tide of change? Is there nothing we can do to really get our life to move in a direction in spite of all that change, which is something which we can take control over? We know the change is there. We know there's certain factors in life that we can't make any difference to. But in spite of that, are there some things that we can take a hand in changing in a way that we would welcome that? And it turns out that there are some things that are constants in life, if we look for them, which can help us change in a direction that is brings us more happiness, brings us more love perhaps, brings us more sense of meaning. There are such things. So although Buddhism goes on a lot about impermanence being something you can rely upon, there are also things which are not impermanent, which are worth striving for too. But they tend not to talk about those quite as much. If it weren't the case, then what's the point of doing any meditation? Because you just go back to being as bad as you were before afterwards. What's the point of wasting your Thursday night if you know that all the calm and peace of mind you get during meditation is going to wear off? Wouldn't that be a real waste of time? So there must be some things that stay with you as a result of your cultivation. Or there are things which stay with our children as a result of having a great parent who has managed to set an example for us in life. Those virtues brush off on us and stay with us. They don't just go away. So there's something worthwhile there. So there are things that don't change, even though we might put a gloss on it by calling it a transition in a good way or whatever. There are some things that don't change in a way that actually brings happiness to life. And perhaps something about self-transformation or self-development is trying to harvest those sorts of things and to collect up those things as much as we can during the short space of our life. Yes, there are things that are going to change. We accept them. We try to surf the change in a way that we don't get affected by it, and so that things which are going to change don't become the things which are going to be things we're relying upon for happiness in life. So you don't pin all your happiness on staying young forever. You don't pin all your happiness on staying healthy forever. You don't pin all your happiness on living forever. But there are some things that you can pin your happiness on. And it's a question of finding those things and perhaps collecting and cherishing those things and looking for the opportunities to avail yourself of those things. The mind is also always something which is a key kingpin in all of this work which we do upon ourselves. If things are bad, well, you just change your mind about it. Things may be bad, but you can change your attitude to it. That's something you can change, and you can take advantage of that change for the better. Because you know if something's bad, it's not going to be like that forever. So you can use those sorts of qualities of mind, in fact, embracing the fact that things are going to change for the better. As for moments of enjoyment, yes, why not enjoy them? But at the same time, you ought to remind yourself that they can't stay with us forever. And are there some things that might stay with us forever? Well, within the work of self-transformation on a Buddhist path or a Buddhist-led sort of wisdom tradition, yes, there are things that seem to stay with us if we cultivate them. But they are not the things of the flesh, but they are the things of our character, virtues, altruism, the sense of decency, which Lawrence was talking about. Actually, these things are not just ephemeral, but they can become ingrained in our character. And Buddhists would have us believe that those things stay with us not just till the end of our life, but are actually things that we take with us to future destinies as well. So although we may leave this mortal coil, but the character qualities that we can build up for ourselves actually carry over. So they outlast this physical existence that we have, which makes it somehow worthwhile to believe in and to value those things that we can cultivate for us in life. And again, meditation comes in as a way to really bring together all those qualities and make them something that stays with us. Meditation, of course, is dealing with a fickle mind, but at the very center of a fickle mind there is something more permanent, more lasting, something which can, outlast this short space of life that we have. And it's those sort of things that, as meditators, we value and try to cultivate to the maximum, and to the point where you can have attainments of mind that actually stay with you at least for the rest of your life, or possibly beyond that as well. So it's a question of seeing what in the transition is a transition for the better. Some things are hard to change, but they are worthwhile in the end. Things like our habits, things that lead to better character, and we have some choice in that. We have certain things that we value, we want to emulate. Why not work and put extra effort into cultivating those qualities of character? Because they're not easy to collect up for oneself. As for the things that happen in life that are unavoidable, well, hopefully we can develop a sense of distance from those things. That they may change, but they don't ruin our day as a result of that. There's a sense of giving ourselves some psychological distance from that change for the things that we can't rely upon. So within change, if you start to deal with it as something that's going to happen anyway, you can start to insulate your mind against that, but at the same time to cultivate within the mind the things that don't change, the things that change for the better, in other words. And whether it's celebrities or politicians or whatever who have undergone change in their life, some for the better, some for the worse, I think the thing to do if you're learning from people's biographies is what were the things at the turning points of those transformations for the better, and we can learn from those too. And often you find influential people in those personalities' lives who were there to exemplify a particular quality, or with an encouraging word at the right time, which really made a difference, which lasted with that person for the rest of their life. So change is something which can be sometimes quite disturbing for us, but also it offers us hope. Because if we were just born like that, or stuck like this, or ingrained with a certain character, or it all was genetic, then we'd have no hope to make anything in life better. But if we can see change as a pathway by which we can actually start to influence things in a much better way, then actually change is a transition that gives us a whole spectrum of possibility. And we can choose which sort of change we want for the better. Yeah. So thank you very much for all the lifelong experience, and hopefully you can now pick the best of those and cultivate those further, allowing for the change to change for the better. Yeah. So for this evening, I think that's probably just about it. Unless there are any sort of pressing questions. But we have the expert here in case there's anything you've only just thought of.
It's the slow acceptance of a person's death because they've been ill for many years. You can see it with people, you can see it with pets, and so it's much easier to accept the change. So there's different types of change. I think if it's an abrupt change and it's really difficult for you to accept it, if you meditate, that period of difficulty will be lessened because you've seen the bigger picture and you know that in time you'll reach an equilibrium. So there's that sort of facet to change as well.
It would be nice if every change was an educational experience, but some are abrupt in a way that maybe at the time doesn't make that possible for us. There's always a thing about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but some things like, let's say, experimenting with drugs may not make you stronger at all. If you knew in advance, then you probably would have avoided that particular thing in the first place. But yes, I think meditation allows us to somehow integrate what we have experienced and learned in a way that we can take something positive from it. And adding the positive dimension to anything that happens to us, no matter what the change might be, or even if there's no change, it's something you have to keep on putting up with, which never seems to change even when we want it to. It helps to give us that ability to put a positive gloss on things. So I always recommend meditation to people, in case you doubted the fact. Yes.
Is there a way through meditation of helping somebody else to accept change? So is there somebody that wouldn't meditate but would benefit from being able to accept change and not positive change so readily? Is there a way of visualizing them? Or
Well, there's a certain thing called spreading loving kindness, where technically speaking, you take whatever positive energy you've built up from your meditation, and at the end of the meditation, then you sort of spread that generally for the benefit of others. Or if you have a particular person who you wish to benefit from that, then sometimes you can visualize them at the center of the positive feeling or the brightness inside yourself. And it may be all in your mind. But often there's a sense in which any sort of tension or enmity or lack of understanding somehow is dissipated by doing that. And it may just be the fact that you're a meditator and you're not sort of continuing in this tug of war with the other person. You've let go of the rope, and let this sort of tension go out of it. Now, it could be that that's really all that's happening. But actually, being one less person creating all these negative vibrations in the world does actually do something for the world. And if you believe that actions really have effects, then just being one person who's inspired, who's positive of mind, people in your immediate surroundings actually get some benefit from that. And it's many meditators I've heard who've commented that they've been meditating some time and they've actually got quite used to the changes in their lives. But it's other people who come up to them and point out ways they've changed that they hadn't realized at all. So there is something obvious that even if you've been meditating in secret, people somehow see a change in you and you're affecting them. Sometimes you're only being an example to them. Sometimes you're only being the calm listener for them, who's, when they're venting all their anger or frustration about life, but you haven't reacted to that and shouted back at them. Simply something like that can really make a difference to another person's life, especially at a time when society is all yelling at each other and no one's listening anymore. It does make a difference. So even a personal practice, don't think the benefits just end with you, but they do have sort of ripples which go outwards to other people. But the further they are from you in terms of your influence, then probably the sort of effect sort of decreases as the distance increases. Certainly there's an effect.
thank you.
I think the old adage, the old saying, the less is more, applies to exactly what you've just said. And I think that when we look at people who may influence us by their actions or inactions, the less they say and the more they do is what I've always paid attention to, because I was lucky enough to have a father who did just that. And I think that anyone who wants to be influenced to a better way of life will find it's not so easy to find the influencing person. It is a search one has to do. But sometimes you find that person purely by accident. It might be in a car accident where somebody is calm as anything, takes care of matters, or it could be a traumatic event in other form of life. It doesn't have to be trauma. It can be happy things as well. But finding one person who is the focus of your attention, daily or weekly or monthly, I think is a very therapeutic thing. Sorry, I've gone on too long. Thank you.
I'll let Lawrence have the last word. So, please allow change to be for the best.